Kaixo arratsaldeon, ongi etorri Lumafesten bigarren egunera. Empezamos con nuestra primera charla de hoy y antes de ya empezar con las preguntas, rápidamente un par de explicaciones. Yo me llamo Sławka Grabowska y moderaré ambos encuentros de hoy. Esta charla está en inglés, pero tenemos disponible la traducción simultánea, tanto a euskera como a castellano, así que si todavía no habéis cogido los cascos, los tenéis ahí atrás. Y solo tenéis que, en cualquier momento, si tenéis algún problema, solicitar ayuda de nuestro equipo en la sala, ¿vale? El encuentro de hoy también estará disponible en streaming. El vídeo se quedará además grabado en el canal YouTube KMK Zuzenean y así al final del encuentro habrá espacio para vosotros. Espero que os animéis para hacer preguntas a Adrienne. Es al final una ocasión única. Y bueno, me gustaría empezar dando gracias al Departamento de Cultura de la Diputación Foral de Gipuzkoa, al Centro Cultural Koldo Michelena Kulturunea y a todo el equipo de Lumafest. Muchas gracias a todos por vuestro increíble trabajo. Fueron unos meses de preparación, así que estoy muy agradecida por eso. Y muchas gracias también a Leo Tetti, que está con nosotros aquí, de Umbriel Editores, que acompaña a Adrienne en este viaje. And now we can properly start. Today at Lumafest, we are very fortunate to have with us Adrienne Young. Adrienne, welcome to San Sebastian, welcome to Donostia, welcome to Lumafest.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure most of you know Adrienne's work very well, so this short presentation is just a formality. Adrienne Young is the New York Times best-selling author of both young adult and adult novels. Her bibliography includes The Sky in the Deep duology, the Fable series, the novels Spells for Forgetting, The Unmaking of June Farrow, and A Sea of Unspoken Things. And the latest release in Spain was published exactly 10 days ago, and it's the first part of a duology, Fallen City. In 2020, Adrienne has founded Writing with the Soul, a writer's workshop that focuses on the cultivation of the connection between the story and the storyteller. And in 2022, together with Isabel Ibanez, she has co-written the Storyteller's Workbook, an inspirational interactive guide to the craft of novel writing. So, well, it's a perfect guest to talk both about writing and about her novels here. And her works have been translated into over 25 countries and frequently appear on bestsellers list. When not writing, she enjoys yoga, hiking, travel, and I believe that you are a foodie, no?
Yes,
so
I am.
That's also a perfect place for you to
I know,
to
I was
be.
just thinking that is the perfect place for me to be.
Okay, my first question is connected to something quite obvious. It's a young literature festival, but you write both young adult literature and adult novels. So I was wondering if you approach writing it differently or the process is exactly the same, and how do you differentiate what is young adult and what is adult?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started out writing young adult fiction and now have transitioned into doing both young adult and adult fiction. But I always planned to do both, so they are really different. I think there are some writers who would say that they're the same, but the main character is just a different age. But I think they're quite different, and I think that a lot of it has to do with the life experience of the characters, and what they're dealing with is often more complex than what a young person is. So I feel like the adult fiction allows me to maybe do more complicated stories and storylines, more layered themes, and that kind of thing. Because a lot of times in young adult, which I really, really love young adult and I love writing it, but a lot of times, you know, they want that pace. Like they want it to go very fast and keep your attention. And with adult, there does often seem to be more space and time to explore the story, and I really like that.
So basically from the beginning you already know if you are writing young adult or adult novel normally, or?
From the beginning of my career?
No, from the beginning of writing of the specific story.
So I know pretty early on, because whatever the story is centered around will kind of tell me a lot about the character. And once I know who the character is, then I can determine if it's young adult or adult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What attracts you most to writing fantasy and magical realism? Because all your books have this fantasy elements, no? So it's or one or the other. Why did you decide on this? And have you ever thought about writing different genre?
Yeah, I love writing fantasy and magical realism because of the magic. You know, I like to imagine that our world really does have magic. You know, I'm kind of a big believer in things like signs and omens, and I'm a little superstitious. And so I think that I like to kind of build worlds that feel real, but they also have magic kind of woven into them. Probably because that's just how I want my real life to be. So I'm very, very attracted to stories like that. But I really love reading and watching all kinds of stories, like from different genres. And so I do often will have like story ideas that are not fantasy or magical realism and kind of work on them in different formats. So right now, kind of just for fun, I've been working on a script, a pilot script for a TV show, and it's like a thriller, you know? So like, I'm not gonna write this in a book right now, but I still wanna explore these other types of stories, and so I will kind of maybe play with them in different formats.
Is there any hope you are going to try to pitch it?
Maybe,
pilot?
yeah. I have a couple of my books are in development for possibly being adapted for the screen, but I mean, you don't know if that's going to happen or not, you know, but I'm really interested in other types of writing, like screenwriting. So maybe one day, we'll never see.
Well, we hope so. That would be fantastic to see it adapted. I have read that one of your interests is history, and I think in The Fallen City, that's very clear. You know, you can see all the world building that reminds us of Roman Empire or, in general, antique Greece. No, so I was wondering, what was your first inspiration or first idea of this story?
For Fallen City, it definitely was the city. So the city itself is really the only thing that hasn't changed about that book, because from the time that I sold it to my publisher to the time that I actually finished it was like 5 years or something. And so I changed a lot in that time, which made the story change a lot. But the city itself never did change. And so that idea of like the walled city and kind of that claustrophobic nature of the city was there from the very beginning. And it was very, very inspired, you know, by Rome. And I think at that time too, I had gone to Italy for a couple of weeks and had spent some time in Rome. And so I was like extra inspired. But I do weave history into all of my books. Sometimes it's like visual, sometimes it's, you know, some historical event that is kind of attached or inspiring the story. And it's just something that captures my imagination and inspires me all the time. So I feel like it always winds up in my books.
When you say the story changed a lot, I remember reading that it was supposed to be a young adult story, but when you went back to it,
Yes.
what decided that you changed into adult novel?
So when I was writing, so I sold the book as a young adult novel and then didn't write the book for a few years. And once I actually started writing it, I was like, uh-oh, this is not young adult. You know, like, what am I going to do? So I talked to my editor and was like, I don't think this is young adult. And so she was like, well, then let's make it adult, which was very nice. But I think a lot of it had to do with what the characters are going through. And the two main characters are married. So I just felt like a lot of what they're dealing with and like the questions that they're asking themselves and the challenges they're having are not those of a teenager, you know? And the book itself, the story is more complicated. The plot is more complicated. It's very political. And even though these are things that you do see in young adults sometimes, I felt like the combination of all of those things really made it to where it didn't fit very well into the young adult world.
What you mentioned about the story being very political, that's one of the things that intrigued me most. How do you balance this strongly political plot and religious, because there are elements of religion too very important. And it sounds terribly serious when I say it like this, but there is that romance of star-crossed lovers, no? But it's not the main focus, no, of the story in some way. So how do you balance the elements that are so different?
It's really difficult, actually, because, like, I kind of think of it as like the head and the heart of the story. Like, you have the plot and the mechanics of the plot and how all the information is being delivered to the reader and the world building, and that's all things you have to like really think about. But then the character itself and the relationships and all of that, that's like the heart emotion part. And so I think you have to really work at balancing them out, because if it's just all brain and all thinking and all, you know, putting a puzzle together in your head, then a lot of times the reader and the writer is not emotionally engaged with the story. But I think having that relationship in the book, especially with the flashbacks and everything, really ground the reader into a complicated story and make them care about it, you know, from a personal perspective.
How did you research for the book? Because there are so many elements that we can actually associate, no, with the real inventions, with the progress of the cities and everything. So how did you prepare that part? Did you read a lot, or did you just take elements using your intuition?
I do a lot of things. I mean, I went to Rome specifically because I try not to write worlds that I haven't been there, like, or I don't have like an in-person inspiration. Because I'm very focused on atmosphere when I'm writing, and so I want to remember, like, I've been there, and I find that I can describe things a lot better if I have memories in those spaces. So I went to Rome, and I did a lot of like touring and walking and you know, going to all the things in the Colosseum and all this stuff, and also spent some time on the coast. And that definitely wound up inspiring this world. You know, the city, it's kind of like up on these cliffs over the sea. And so I feel like I had that in-person kind of research, but then I also did a lot of reading, a lot of like watching documentaries, and just trying to immerse myself into those details so that I could pull from them when I'm writing. And then the other thing that I did is I did a lot of the Roman military, like, has so many records. They kept very good records, and like of different battles and what happened and their strategies and all of that. And so I found myself also reading heavily like battle accounts and things that I was like, oh, this is like really interesting and violent, but very, you know, it definitely influenced the story, and a lot of like the weapons, and the city comes under siege, and so a lot of that type of warfare, I definitely got inspired from those historical accounts.
The part of the siege sounds very believable when you read it. It's just exactly like you would imagine, no? So I think the research was very visible there, but in a positive way.
Good, it worked.
Have you done any kind of map or anything? Because after all, the city is divided in two, no? And we often read how they walk from one part to the other. Did you have any physical map of this one?
I have my own map that is drawn like in my notebook, so that I can reference it and I know which way is north and all of that stuff. But we don't have an official map for the world. So this is, my editor is here and he knows this. My past several books, it's like so tight on the schedule, you know, that by the time I have finished the book, it has to go to print, you know, and so we haven't had a lot of time to like do all these fun things like develop detailed maps and things. And so I think for a few years there, I was like writing so many books that it was just like all over the place. And so now I'm like, we should do like a map for Fallen City, or for like a special edition or something. Now that, you know, I have the map in my head.
It would look fantastic. I have read somewhere that you prepare playlists when you are writing the stories, and you also have the Pinterest boards. So I was wondering, for those who haven't read The Fallen City yet, what kind of image and what song represent best the book, in your opinion?
Yeah, oh my gosh. So I think there is this image in my head of the world that is, I think I have it on my Pinterest board for this book in particular, but it's like a sea, like you can see this like really beautiful sea, like think Greece or something, but the image is framed in ruins. So it's like this broken down, crumbling archway, but you can see the sea through it. And to me, that's like a perfect picture of this world. It's like beautiful and, you know, has all this history, and it was once this like great city, but it's just completely decimated during this entire book. And so you kind of get to see in the past what the city used to be like. But I love that image, and I think I definitely, like, when I think of this world, I think of that image. And as far as a song, I feel like I listened to a lot of times my playlist, music really inspires me, and a lot of times I have songs with words on my playlist, but in this book, I actually wound up writing a lot to just instrumental music that didn't have words. And I'm not sure why, but it's like every playlist kind of feels different. And so I think those big kind of cinematic movie score type things or songs are definitely more apt for this project.
There are two characters in the book that I feel like they are marking the two axes of the story. The priestess Ophelius and philosopher, I probably pronounced it terribly wrong, Ria Vitracian.
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 Yeah, you get it.
So they play kind of similar roles for the main characters, for Maris and Luca. And they are in theory, on opposite sides, no science, religion, but in fact they collaborate. So I was wondering, because both of them are women, have you checked the historical figures? Were you inspired by any famous female characters from the past?
Not in particular. I feel like a lot of like people in those positions during that time were men, which was kind of fun to make them women in my story. But a lot of, you know, these great philosophical thinkers were men. There were some women, but, you know, a lot of the ones that are studied today and quoted today, a majority of them are men. And I think with the priestesses, I've always been very intrigued by the priestesses of Delphi, you know, in the cave, on the island, like, all of that. And so I think that in my mind, I kind of had that as a basis for Priestess Ophelius, but they are definitely kind of the foundation of the story, those two characters.
Fallen City is also in some way, as far as I know, for you connected to the current events in the world, no? For your way of dealing with all the situation. So how exactly did it help you to process the current affairs?
Yeah, I mean, the world is not in a great place. Things are just so hard right now. And I think every generation has its challenges. And one of the things that I have found very frustrating as I get older and learn more about the world and learn more about life is just realizing how cyclical this is, war, and how humanity just returns to war over and over and over again. It's not like a new problem, you know? And so I think just trying to make sense of that in my head, that's a lot of what this book was for me, or this series. But I feel like there's a lot of complex questions, right, that you're asking about that, as like no matter who you are or where you live. It's like a puzzle, like a brain puzzle for me. And so I think in this book, I was working through a lot of my feelings about that stuff.
Have you already written The Chosen Son, the second part? Is it finished?
Yeah, it's finished.
Do we know when it's coming up in Spain?
Can
Can we say it? Or?
In Spain, it's early 27. Yeah, so sometime in the first part of 2027.
Honestly, I'm very anxious to find out what happens because the cliffhanger at the end of the first book is amazing.
A lot more happens.
In general, your female characters, Maris, Fable, Eileen from the Viking girl, are very strong and, well, they know their place in the world, they know what they want. So what were your models to create your female protagonists? Are they in some way, would you say they are similar between themselves?
Yeah, I think they all have really big feelings. Like, I think that, they're different in as far as personalities and different personality traits and qualities. But I think the thing that they really have in common is that they feel things very, very deeply. And that's how I am. And so I feel like in that way, I'm kind of always writing myself into my characters a little bit, even though they're very different than me. But I think, being passionate and acting on passion is kind of a through line between all of them. And it makes them very interesting for me to write as well. Keeps me engaged with the story when I'm writing. And I think that's also why readers tend to connect with them.
I was wondering, because I have an impression that throughout all your stories, there's one element that repeats itself, and it would be water. Sea that we have both in Fable, well, the most important part. Then we have sea again below the cliffs, in Fallen City.
Yep.
There is river in one of the standalone books. So what meaning does it have for you? Or is it a coincidence?
Yeah, it's not a coincidence. I feel like a world is not complete when I'm writing it unless there's some kind of anchor of water somewhere in the landscape. And I don't know why. I'm like, I don't know why I feel that way, but I think every single book I've written, it's like the fjords or a river or the sea or even in my last book, it was like the gorge, with a river that goes through it. And to me, it's just like the world can't be complete unless it has that element, and it makes it feel kind of like a grounding presence that things revolve around. And even like the next book that I'm working on it has water too. It's just like, I think like every book I write is probably gonna have it.
There was a moment I was thinking, I'm imagining it. I'm going to ask a question and she's going to look at me like, no. The first duology that you published, Sky in the Deep, is set in the Viking world. And I was wondering, how did you decide on that setting? Have you also visited the Nordic countries, or what was the main inspiration? And did the fact that women had special position in Viking society have any influence on it?
Yeah, I mean, Viking societies had like some of the first sets of laws that protected women and were specifically geared towards the rights of women. And I mean, it was still a patriarchal society for sure. But I mean, some of the laws that Viking societies had, we didn't have in the United States until like the 1960s, so I think that was very inspiring for me. I have not spent time in Nordic countries. It's where I've like always wanted to go since I was a little girl. So I feel like I very much relied on things like video and pictures and just like trying to imagine that world. And especially at that time, like with my first book, I didn't have the ability to go on like research trips or anything like that. But I think I'm just very drawn to the like misty, cool, saturated, dramatic coastline. Like that is like my favorite type of landscape.
I was also wondering about the family dynamics in your stories, because they always are kind of challenging. What inspires you most to use this specific trope?
Probably my own very complicated family dynamics. I feel like I love my family, but I'm very, very different from them. And so I've always had a lot of just complicated dynamics. And so I think that that's something, you know, writers often have like different problems or questions that they're kind of writing about over and over and over again. And that's one of mine. I think just the idea of unconditional love and what you would do for the people you love and what it means to, you know, like be family versus like blood family versus chosen family. These are things that show up in all of my books. And I think it's because I'm constantly processing those things. And so I think it's not just like relatable in the sense that everyone has some kind of complicated family dynamics, but I think for me it's been very central to who I am and who I've become as an adult. And so it's something I'm always thinking about in a story.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering also about the struggle that you always put your characters, you know, in the situations that they have to survive. And I was wondering if it makes it for you like a safe place, you know, this conflict, huge conflict that they have to survive, or is it more like a new challenge each time?
I think it's a new challenge each time. It's very, in the story, I want the stakes to be high, you know, like I want there to be danger, and that's just like when I'm reading a book or watching a movie, like I want the stakes to be high. And so I think as a writer, I'm always, you know, intensity is like the thing that I'm always after. And I think one of the best ways to build that type of tension is to put everybody in danger, you know? So I think that's probably why.
And this kind of edge situation, does it make it easier to craft characters or more difficult? Because you find them in the situation that is not common. So does it influence how you see their personalities or...
Yeah, I mean, I think you learn a lot about a character and a person when they go through a lot of adversity, you know? So I find that it helps me understand the character better, but I also think in making really flawed characters that don't always respond in a typical way is very interesting to me. So, you know, there's no like just pure heroes in my books, and you know, like I want my characters to feel fear and to feel doubt and unsure about what they're doing and be tempted to do the wrong thing or make really bad decisions. I really want all of that stuff in the mix in the midst of those high stakes, because otherwise you just have like good and evil, and that is not interesting to me at all. So I feel like the combination of those things is what develops that.
And which of the characters that you've written was the most difficult to craft, and why?
The most difficult to craft. I think actually, I would say maybe Emery in Spells for Forgetting, because that book, I just felt like I understood all the other characters first when I wrote that book, and I did not understand. I just didn't have like a good picture of her in my head or understand what she wanted, even through writing the whole first draft of the book. So it wasn't until I went back and I was revising that things really started to click with her. And that was difficult because I felt so much more connected to the other characters. But then I think it wasn't until I really understood all the other characters and these people she grew up with and her father and all of that, that I was like, oh, now I understand who she is. And it took some time.
And which of the characters is the most similar to you?
Most similar to me. I think the main character in the book that I'm finishing right now, I think is the most like me of any of my characters, for sure. But of the ones that I have published and are out, I would say probably West in the Fable series. He's a male character, but I think our personalities are very, very similar.
Some of the tropes you've used in past are forbidden love, star-crossed lovers, or found family, as you've mentioned before. Is there any trope that you haven't used yet, but you would really love to do?
Mm. I don't know. I feel like, I mean, it's not a trope, it's a genre, but like, I really want to write something with zombies. And I don't know how I'm going to do that because that's not really the kind of book I write. But one day, I have this like obsession. I just really want to write a book with zombies. And so even though that's not a trope, I feel like that's like the only thing I can think of that I'm just like, oh man, one day I'm going to write the zombies. I probably have to do some convincing with my editors and stuff. They'll be like, who's going to buy this book? I don't know.
If you could live in one of your fictional worlds, but it would be impossible to change anything that you've already written in that world, which one would you choose and why?
I think I would want to live in the sky in the deep world because it's just so beautiful in my mind. Like it's just stunning, very immersed, and like the wilderness is very wild and rugged. And to me, I just imagine like living somewhere like that. Like I would love it.
A bit difficult, no?
Yeah.
The survival, you know.
I feel like all of my worlds would be kind of hard to live in. But that one to me is the most beautiful, you know.
And what is first, when you're crafting the story, do you have first, I don't know, an image, one scene, the whole plot comes to your mind, the character? What's the first, very, very beginning that you start with?
It's kind of different for different books. So in the beginning, when I first started publishing, I would often get like a picture in my head, and that would inspire the story. Now, I feel like, you know, with Fallen City, it was the setting is what really came to me first and inspired the story. Or, you know, like inciting incidents will come to mind now, or like a specific character. So I feel like it's all over the place now. I have like a note in my phone where like when I get inspired or have like a little idea, I write it all down in this note in my phone that's very, very long. And I feel like the more books that I write, the more, I guess, like different ways the stories come to me. So I feel like that now has become really different for each project, where it used to all be the same.
Okay. We always ask the same question to the authors that are visiting Lumafest, because we focus a lot on the importance of writing and of, you know, younger people trying to continue and write some new things. So I was wondering, you have experience with the workshops, you taught this one, so what advice would you give to those who aspire to write or aspire to publish? I imagine it would be two different things, but what would be your advice?
Yeah, I think so. The thing that I say a lot is trying to encourage people to write things that excite them, because you need to feel excited if you're going to actually finish a book. It's just such a slog. Like it's a really big job to like actually write an entire book. So feeling excited about it is really important. You know, writing what you're excited about, maybe not necessarily what you think will be popular. But the other thing too that I think is really important is just understanding that, this is my opinion, but understanding that the best writing often comes from tapping into your own pain. So, I mean, all of my books are very much about like either something I'm really like a fear of mine or some kind of wound I have, you know, like at their core, that's what they are. And I find as a reader, the work that I am most impacted by is often the same. You know, you're writing about something that's kind of like hard. And I think that a lot of times, you know, writers don't want to go there because it's a lot of emotional work, but I think it's really valuable, and I think it makes stories so much more compelling. And so I would say, you know, writing stuff you're excited about, but also like not being afraid to go to kind of painful places in your writing, because that's where the most authentic storytelling is.
I think, but I'm not sure, the next question is slightly connected to this one, because once I've heard an interview, I think, with you, where you were talking about writing, the emotional cost of it, finding your own creativity, and you mentioned the importance of the Gilmore Girls for you.
Oh, yeah.
So could you explain that? Why is it important in the context of creativity for you?
So Gilmore Girls is like my comfort show. Like I will just put it on when I'm like cooking or something and it's just on in the background. What I really love about that show is all of the characters are very imperfect. They all make really big mistakes, and it's not like there's one perfect character that's like just good and always makes the right choices. And the complicated family dynamics. Like the family really, really loves each other. They have this very true love for each other, but they do things wrong all the time and they hurt each other all the time on, like whether they mean to or not. And I just find it very realistic emotionally. And so I think that definitely connects.
Mm-hmm. And as a writer, what was the most challenging moment for you?
Probably when I was writing June Farrow. That book, I say all the time that book like almost killed me. It was very difficult to write. The complicated time storyline in that book, which is so funny because it has wound up really being my most successful book in the US. But I really doubted myself as a writer while I was writing that because I just wasn't sure I could pull it off, basically. And so by the time I finished it, I was so incredibly proud of it because it was a challenge, like my biggest creative challenge. And I think it really propelled me into a new chapter of my own writing. And so that definitely is the one. Like that was the one where I was like, maybe I need to give up. Maybe I need to cancel my contract. But I'm glad I didn't.
Okay, could you tell us what you are reading right now, and what would you recommend to our public today?
I just finished reading The Will of the Many. I don't remember that author's name, but I loved that book. If anybody's like in the mood for a big epic fantasy, it's really good. And the second book just came out that I haven't read. But that one was really great. It's like a big, long, just big world and everything. And I was just very in the mood for that. And then I don't think it's out here yet, but The Sun and the Star Maker by Rachel Griffin is a young adult that it's fantasy. And it'll probably come out next year here or something. But that one, it's very much like a fairy tale, and it's a really beautiful young adult book. And that one was awesome too.
That's another question that we ask to all of our invited authors. What authors would you recommend us for the next editions, and why?
To read next?
To invite next.
Oh, to hear. Oh my gosh, so many. One of my favorite authors is Laini Taylor. She's the author of the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, and I just think she is so talented. I also really love the way that she writes or like talks about writing. Like she's just so smart. So I love her. I love hearing her talk about her writing. And you know who I would really like to meet myself to talk to him is Jay Kristoff. He writes like really dark fantasy. And I just find him very interesting, and I find his books really interesting, and I think he would be a really fun person to have like a conversation like this with.
What do you think about the negative stereotypes about young adult literature, and has it ever affected you, that people sometimes consider it a minor thing?
I don't know. I feel like it's definitely been a successful genre, and so I'm not sure. I think during like the Twilight years, I think that's when people were like, ew, young adult. But I love reading young adult too, and I was writing adult fiction also before I got published, but my first book that got published was young adult, and so I've done quite a few young adult books now. And I just find them like very comforting. Like I just really enjoy them, and I enjoy writing them. I don't think I realized very much like the negative stereotype until I started writing adult, and then ran into that a little bit, you know, it's just so funny because I think a lot of times the things that are the most artistically revered and win the awards and things like that are things that actually have very low sales. So it's like, okay, yes, but like nobody wants to read it, you know, like it's considered art, but the best art, but no one wants to read the book. And like when you look at the masses. And so I think that's very interesting. And I think young adult has definitely proven that mindset wrong, because sometimes people just want to have fun when they read.
I think we'll open the space for questions for the public. So if you would like to ask anything, I can't see you, but if you raise your hand, there is a microphone, and someone in the room, I think Gonzalo has the microphone, so he will come to you and give you the opportunity. We have one here.
Oh, this is for that? Yes. Is it on still? Okay.
Hola, yo quería preguntarte cómo te sentiste cuando por primera vez, en este caso una editorial española, mostró interés por tus libros, y cómo te sientes al saber que tus libros se han publicado en tantos países, entonces tienes lectores de muchas partes del mundo.
This lady's voice is so nice. It's like very lovely. Yeah, so actually my Spanish publisher is here, and he's awesome. And this is my editor, Leo Girano. But I want to say that selling Spanish was my first translation. I think it was, but I think that's the first like foreign language translation that I ever had. And I mean, before I got published, I was like, that would be the biggest dream, is to see your book in a different language, you know? And now my books have been translated into a lot of languages, which is amazing. But I think even, you know, building a readership in another country is really special, because all the cultural differences and, you know, actual geographical distance and all of that, like being able to connect through a fictional story with readers from a totally different background, I think is just very magical. It's a very magical idea. And now I've done all of my books with Urano, and they've like stuck with me, you know, from my humble beginnings. And so I think it's been very, very cool. It's a dream for sure.
Okay, is there any other question? There are two, yes.
Thank you so much for coming, and I really hope you like it here.
Okay.
I just wanted to do a little comment. Maybe I don't know if you've seen the adaptation of Pride and Prejudice and Zombies,
Yeah.
the movie.
Oh,
So
yes, of course I
I
have.
think that if you use that target audience, you could do something with zombies, for sure.
Leo, help me convince help me convince my US publisher. I know, I actually love that movie. I do.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I was curious about how did you start writing? When was the first time that you started creating stories? Because many authors do it from when they were like children, and they start making little stories in their minds. And how was your process with that?
I mean, when I was a kid, writing was truly the only thing that I was good at. Like I wasn't a good student. I was always in trouble in school. I didn't play sports, you know. I feel like writing was the only thing that like teachers and adults like would compliment me on and be like, wow, you're really good at that. So I think from a young age, I was very drawn to writing, and I really enjoyed it, and I think especially because I am like those characters that have like feel things very deeply. It was a really good emotional outlet for me. But I did not think that I would ever like professionally be an author. I didn't plan to pursue it at all. I was just gonna keep it as a hobby, you know? And I just didn't think it was possible. And so I didn't want to go after something that I thought I could fail at. So I just didn't try, you know? And then when I was in my 20s, I was working on a book that I was really excited about, and just slowly kind of started coming around to the idea, like, what if I tried to get it published? What if I tried to get a literary agent with it? And it took a long time, but then I finally like went all in and doubled down on that like dream. And now I'm here and doing it, you know? But it's just so funny because if you would have asked me when I was a teenager, like if I wanted to be an author one day, I'd be like, oh no, that would never happen. But it was like secretly my dream. Yeah.
Hola, buenas tardes. Me gustaría saber, tú de pequeña, ¿qué es lo que leías? ¿Qué libro así infantil fue especial para ti? Y luego, una vez que has conocido un poco más nuestro país, ¿te ha inspirado algo?
Yes, I find Spain very inspiring. This is my third visit, but first time to this region. And it's just so beautiful. Sorry, I know I keep hitting this, but I can't help it. There we go. So I'm working on a project right now, or I'm always working on like 3 projects. There's one that I'm developing right now that is very much inspired by, visually inspired by the cathedral in Barcelona, not the Sagrada, but is it Cathedral of Barcelona? Is that what it's called? The first time I went there, it was very much inspired this project that I'm now starting to develop, and it's very much tied to that cathedral. And then your other question about books I read when I was young, the one that made the biggest impact on me, honestly, was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. It's like an American classic about a family, very dysfunctional family, that lives in Brooklyn, New York, I think during like the 40s or something like that. And I don't know what it was about that book, but I've read it so many times throughout my life. Very complicated family dynamics and very flawed characters, and I think it really had a huge impact on the way that I write characters even now.
¿Hay alguna pregunta más? Si no os animáis, yo tengo más, pero no quiero saltar a nadie. No veo más. Vale. I wanted to ask you, since I asked you about problem with the microphone. 1 second.
Thank you.
I asked you about the negative stereotypes about young adult, but there are also some negative stereotypes about fantasy. It's considered a minor genre by many. I strongly disagree with this, but I was wondering, how do you deal with someone who thinks something like this, or who tries to, you know, put down the work of so many fantasy writers?
I find, again, kind of what I said before about like, I just find it so interesting because there are such huge readerships for those books. Like, so many people read them that I feel like you can't discount them, right? Like, it's clearly making a connection with people. And then a lot of times these books, you know, that are like very literary and very important work, aren't. So I feel like that speaks for itself, honestly. But the thing I love about fantasy also is it's a different like channel to contemplate a lot of real world issues and ask really hard questions and you know, kind of go to battle with those things. I feel like there's so many possibilities with like the parallels in our own world, and I think that people feel like they can do that in fantasy worlds when they're reading.
Fantasy stories can be used, no, as social critique tool or something.
Definitely,
So,
yeah.
If you could be remembered because of only one of your books, which one would you choose? Which one would you like to be connected to your name forever? And why?
I think probably The Unmaking of June Farrow, because it has just connected with so many readers in a way that I never expected. I thought when I wrote that book, I was like, no one's gonna like this. No one's gonna understand what I'm trying to do with this book. And I really underestimated it. And so I think it taught me a lot about myself as a writer. Like I said before, I'm so proud of it. And so I think if there's like one book that I'm like known for, I think that book is a really good representation.
We don't have much time left, but I would like to ask you two more questions. And one is, how do you deal when you are traveling, promoting your books, and changing your place where you are so often? How do you deal with writing at that time? Do you write when you travel, or do you make like breaks for promotion?
Well, I'm usually running late on my deadlines, so I feel like I don't get to take very many breaks because I'm always like behind. Like right now I have revisions that are due the first week of May, but I'm here. So like last night I was like up in bed like trying to work. So I feel like unfortunately I am the type of person that I really need inspiration to work consistently. And so when I'm not feeling inspired, it's really hard for me to work. And so I have to like try to create these perfect conditions for inspiration, but it doesn't always happen. And when you're working on deadlines with contracts and things, like you don't have a choice. So, but the great thing about traveling is that I'm so inspired when I'm traveling that it kind of is like fresh fuel, you know, like right now, like walking around the streets of San Sebastian today, like just, oh my gosh, like I'm so inspired and I'm having ideas and it makes me want to write. And so I think it's really important to have those experiences, like even if I really should be at home working.
You mentioned the routine that you need, some elements. What are the things that you need that way or another to write? What is necessary for you to sit down and write?
I have learned over time that I get very, very distracted. Like I'm always thinking of many things at once, and so I have to try to create as little stimulation as possible when I'm working. So like it needs to be quiet, or I can listen to my playlist that I have, but I can't have my phone in the room. I can't have the internet. I can't have like any distractions. And then once I get into that like deep workspace, I can work for a really long time.
Okay, I think that's the last question. I don't think we will have time for more. So I was always wondering, is there any question that you wanted to be asked in the interview, but no one ever asked you?
I don't think so.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think so. I feel like I've been asked a lot of questions in my time as a writer. And I feel like the things that I'm most interested in talking about, I usually get asked about. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we are going to finish here. We have run out of time. So thank you, Adrienne, so much for accepting our invitation, for the wonderful conversation. I'm sure we'll remember it for a very long time. And just a few things. Queremos recordar que seguimos con el programa de Lumafest. A las 7:15 empieza la charla con Alina Not. Y mañana tenemos en el programa las charlas con Nerea Llanes a las 6. el anuncio de los ganadores de nuestro concurso de microrelatos y entrega de los premios a las 7 y charla con Miriam M. Lejardi a las 7:30. Así que esperamos que os animéis a participar también en estos encuentros. Os recuerdo que los cascos que habéis usado para escuchar la traducción, por favor, no olvidéis de devolverlos ahí atrás. Y ahora vamos a pasar a la firma de los libros de Adrienne Young. Ahí atrás también, abajo hay una mesa. Muchísimas gracias a todos por venir y espero que os animéis a participar en las siguientes charlas.